For this movie, I've removed the two images from the front page of our Sky Harbor Operations Offering Memorandum, and I'm going to be placing some images and talking about fitting. And if you've been following along in the previous movies of this chapter, then you've probably seen me using the fitting contextual menu quite a bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into it so that you have a better understanding of how to work with these images as far as sizing and resizing them within our frames. So, I have a couple of blank frames that I've created from our Frames tool, and I have the second one highlighted. And what I want to do is hit Control D on my keyboard or go up to the File Place menu, and I'm just going to select an image from here, in this case XM1210 number 11, and click Open. Now, when I do that, we can see that all I have in this frame currently are a bunch of tree branches. That's because when you place an image into InDesign by default or into a blank frame, InDesign is just going to place the full image on there, but crop it where the frame is. So we need to make some adjustments here to make this work in our current document. Now I could right click on this document to bring up the fitting command, and here we can see that we have several options for fitting this image or to make it work within our frame. So I have fit frame to content. If I want to choose that, which I will do, essentially I just told InDesign to take my frame and make it the same width and height as the image itself. Now this is a useful tool, but only if you know the exact size and dimension of your image that you're going to use. Otherwise, what tends to happen if you're working in a high resolution image, then you're going to get a big image placed on your screen. I'm going to back up for a second by hitting Control Z on my keyboard to undo that. And then we'll take a look at some of the other options. So if I right click, bring up the fitting menu, here we see we have fit content to frame. So if I select that, it is now going to fit the entire image width and height to the width and height of my frame. Now this is great because we can see the entire image, but there's still a problem that exists here. If you were like me and just carelessly drew a frame without any regard to the width and height, then what can tend to happen is that InDesign will contort this image's pixels, either the width and height, to make it fit into that frame. That's going to cause problems if we send this to the printer, so we need to fix it. I want to hit Control Z on my keyboard to go back to our tree branches here. We'll take a look at some of the other options. If I right click here and choose fitting, then I have yet another option, Alt Shift Control E, to fit the content proportionally. If I select that, InDesign is going to fit the image as proportionally as it can. So if this, in this example, the image that I'm using is a landscape image, and my frame is somewhat landscape, but it's going to use that as a basis to fit it in proportionally. But you'll notice down on the bottom, it gives me a blank space, or kind of this, what we often refer to as white space within our frame. So this isn't exactly going to work for me because this isn't the size that I want it. I want it to be, or to match horizontally with my Chase logo here. So this isn't going to work. So I'm going to hit Control Z to bring back my tree branches again. I'm going to right click, choose fitting, and this time fill frame proportionally. So now what it does is InDesign tries to calculate what's going on in the image compared to what's happening in my frame. So a lot of calculations are happening here. The size and width of my image, and the size and width of my frame, and what is going to work without contorting the pixels in here so that it looks right when it goes to the printer. Now, by choosing this option, InDesign isn't necessarily fitting the edges exactly into my frame per se, but it is going to do its best to make it work. So here, if I grab my direct select tool and highlight it, You can see this red bounding box, and this is the actual box that contains the image itself. So we can see that the image just exceeds the edge of my bounding box a little bit. But you cannot see that unless I select it. So that tells me that this image is in fact proportionate within my frame just the way I want it without contorting it whatsoever. Something else I want to point out. Now, I often tend to use the contextual menu just because for me this comes natural, it's quick, it's easy, and it's efficient. But there is yet another way that you can be efficient when you are fitting content or images within your frames here, and that is to go up to the command menu, and you'll see these little icons, and if you hover your mouse over these icons, they'll tell you exactly what they do, but essentially they are the tools that we are just using in our contextual menu. So here we have icons for fitting frame to content or content to frame and so on. So instead of bringing up the contextual menu, you could of course highlight the image and come up here and choose either one of these icons and just hover your mouse over it to figure out what it is. One final thing that I want to point out since we're here on this topic is whenever you put that command to a frame, such as we've done here, then that logic is applied to the frame no matter how many times you are going to apply images to the frame itself. So if I delete this image and I'm left with my frame, and then I come out and choose the place command, and let's say I choose a different image like number 28 here and drop it in there, then you can see InDesign automatically lays that out in proportion to whatever option I've last selected. And that'll happen until I delete that frame or choose another command for it.